Hi, how's everyone doing today? This is Amy Hamilton, author of The Project Manager, Life is a Project, and The Consummate Communicator, Character Traits of True Professionals. And this is our marathon session day. What does that mean? It is 24 authors in 12 hours, November 11th. Today is Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day, everyone. And I have such a special author with me today. And it is my goal to get through this interview without actually crying. And if I do, it's fine. I've got some Kleenex right here. I am ready for this. And the reason I'm saying that is Beth Underwood took a major undertaking in this book, and she chronicles a National Guard unit that went to Iraq. And Beth, can you share with us the inspiration behind your book and then some of the story?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on here. It's just so appropriate for Veterans Day, and I am honored to be here with you. As far as inspiration, I think it was kind of twofold, actually. I just moved to Livingston, Tennessee, which is middle Tennessee in the upper Cumberlands. And I was working for a small newspaper, ended up on the courthouse square as one of my first assignments to cover Veterans Day. And, you know, I live in Lexington, Kentucky now, and when you're here and you go to Veterans Day, it's just, you know, there's no real sense of community, I guess. But on that square in Livingston that day, it was as if the entire county had shown up. And you could feel the tension in the air because this was 2004. And two Marines had just been killed in the last couple of months, and their mothers were there representing, and it was just a really solemn affair. And I didn't really know a whole lot else at that point. I went on to discover that there was a National Guard unit just a couple of miles down the road at the most. And what ended up happening was within less than a year, on October 13th, 2005, Sergeant Wesley Tucker was killed, and I covered his death. And so I can remember vividly still calling Kim and Ted Tucker that night, and they were so gracious to me, and I think we all three just sat on the phone and just cried. You know, it was it was heartbreaking. It was the hardest interview I think I've ever done, because it was so fresh for them, and I felt invasive, yet at the same time I knew that they wanted their story told right. You know, it just it made
and in a small town, in a small community, I would imagine this death, even though very, very personal to the parents, of course, very, very personal throughout that entire community.
Oh, absolutely. It rang through that community and spread like wildfire, and the flags and the signs and the memorials just popped up one after, and it was just, I've never seen anything like it. And once that happened and I covered that, it opened the door with Captain Paul Shannon, who was the local Guard unit's commander. And so he had taken, he was part of the 278th, who was lifted and put in Iraq earlier, right before I got there for that first Veterans Day. So they were already in country. And as I started talking to him, he started telling me stories. And the cool thing about Shannon was that he was actually former active Army, Super 6-2 crew chief in the Battle of Mogadishu. So I had that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, I had farmers and football coaches and a recruiter. So they covered, you know, every spectrum as far as citizen soldiers were concerned. And as the stories kept coming out about their deployment, because they're still over there in country, I knew there was a story to tell, and I couldn't quit digging and asking questions. And before I knew it, he was giving other soldiers the okay to talk to me, and one thing led to another.
I think it's very, very funny. You just used a very Army term there, OP. Can you tell our audience what that is?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What did I say?
I said you just use a very military term and very military acronym. I said that you just said they're having people call me from the OP to come talk to me.
Oh, you know what? He was just giving people the okay to talk to me.
Oh, they
That's
okay to talk to you.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
OP is a lot of times operational position, and I thought you were actually referring to the OP. And so that's very funny. I am going to put the link up to your book right now, and I don't even know if we've talked about it. Your book's name is Gravity.
Mhm.
And what was the meaning behind the book name when you gave it that term? Because at first I thought, oh, Space Force, and then I was like, oh, has a very different meaning. And so, can you share that with the audience?
Well, it's interesting that you mention that, because it ends up meaning, I think, something a little bit different to everybody who reads it. I remember the way the name came about was I was speaking with the main character, and he said, "You've got to hear this song," and he sent me John Mayer's song "Gravity." And he said, "This just speaks to my heart in so many ways." And it to me, it was the weight, it was the heaviness of the situation on the one hand. It represented the IEDs and the gravity of what happened that day, literally. You could look at just about any definition for gravity, and you could find a way that this book fits any definition, any way you look at gravity. But especially, I think, just the heaviness and the weight. That's kind of what it boils down to for me, I think.
All right, such an important topic. And so, how did you go about researching this for your book?
Well, nobody wants to see my Google search for that point, because I'll tell you what, I mean, I was researching chemical weapons, and the Maftana chemical weapons complex, and IEDs, you name it. There was a decent amount of that search going on, but the real research came with those guys, and hours, and I mean hundreds of hours on the phone, just over and over and over, going over just the finest little details. And one of the things that sticks out to me was Sergeant Mac, John McCullough, and Eric Weaver, also known as Big Weave. They were talking to me about August 22nd, which is the day that their world basically collapsed in on all of them. And at one point, Mac said, "Well, we were going around a curve." And we said, "There was no curve in that road. There was a bend." And I'm like, "What was it? Was it a bend or was it the curve?" So they sit there and argue for 30 minutes over, was it a bend or was it a curve? And I wasn't moving forward until they made up their mind, So there was a lot of getting one person's story, then going back and getting the others, then bringing them together and comparing. It was a lot of conversations,
And so, for this book, you really tell the journey of this one specific unit in Iraq. What is your goal for a reader to take away from this book?
These guys were just ordinary guys, and some of them didn't want to go to war at all. Some of them were former active duty, and they were all, let's go. They couldn't have been more different if they tried, and they were. It's a kind of a complicated story, so I would let people read the book for more on this. But they were actually rejected from their home commander in Sweetwater, Tennessee. That's how they landed with Paul Shannon. And so they were the people that were looked to fail, honestly. And through grit, determination, and just I will show you attitude, they overcame it, and they called themselves the silent professionals, and that's what they became. By the time they left, they were a cohesive unit who was really making a difference in Iraq. So it's a fascinating story, and I think that by the time you get to the end of the book, you have a new appreciation for what citizen soldiers do, servicemen in general, but certainly citizen soldiers, because this was something that they never would have expected to happen. The National Guard just didn't deploy. This is the first time since World War II that there was a major deployment of the Tennessee National Guard. So I think you get a real sense for what a hero. And I don't want to use that term loosely, but I think you get a real sense for what a hero can be and is. And it's, heroes are in all of us. They're all around us. And I think you come away heartbroken, but I think you also come away feeling okay, feeling like, what, there is good in the world. And as long as there are people like you around, we're going to be all right.
I think that's a really important message. And one of the things that really resonates with me about this story is both my sister and I were in the Michigan Army National Guard at the same time. And when I was commissioned onto active duty, my sister, who was enlisted, was the first person that I gave my salute to. And in the military, that's called your silver dollar salute.
Wow.
So, and then years later, after I had left active duty, went in the reserves, left the reserves, I was a contractor in Iraq. My sister was called up in the Michigan Army National Guard, and we ended up spending a day together in the Green Zone.
Is that right?
Just there she was working at a bank. This was her profession, a mother, 2 junior high school age kids. And suddenly she's there in Iraq and spending that year away from this crucial year with her family. And so I think your story, the importance of understanding that these are, not your active duty people who this is their day in and day out life, the reserves, the National Guards, they really, so many people at that point, you had joined the reserves and the Guard because that was how you're going to pay for college. It was
Sure.
like the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. The thought of getting called up, that was very, very new. And it was early in the war, people didn't expect it. And then you had National Guard units and reserve units going 2 or 3 times in a row. Yeah. And really impacting families. So I think you're sharing this story, so important. And then also what happens when these people go back home is that these stories need to be shared so people know what they went through when they were in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And most importantly for me was that these guys stood a really good chance of their stories just sort of going into oblivion.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about that sometimes, and wow, that was something I can't ever imagine having happened to them. Their story deserved to be out there.
So important for you to chronicle. We're about halfway through the segment, and what I want to do is take a moment and share with everybody. My books are available for free on Kindle download all day. That's the Project Manager and the Consummate Communicator. But for the print editions, if anyone purchases copies, 10% of all proceeds are going to be donated to the Wounded Warrior Project. And I've also put the links to the Wounded Warrior Project into our chat. So if anybody wants to volunteer or donate, it's a very important organization for veterans, and especially I think for veterans in the Guard and the reserves who might not be able to get your more traditional sort of support, as they might not even be near VA offices.
Yeah, true.
So Beth, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say on that note, Gravity is available on Amazon. The ebook edition is free today as well. So if anybody wants to grab that.
Perfect. And the Amazon link is in the chat. And of course, you can reach Beth at her website. And Beth, you and I know each other through a mutual friend, James Woosley. James Woosley is a veteran, Air Force veteran, and he owns Free Agent Press, which so many of the authors being featured today on this Veterans Day edition are part of. And would you like to share a little bit about how you know James, your experience? And it's my understanding you've also done a little bit of editing for James.
Yes. I worked on a book. I think it's been a couple of years ago now, but worked on a book that a fellow was putting out. Had a lot of fun. It was a good experience. A good experience for sure. James is a stand-up guy.
Wonderful. And we haven't talked about it too much, but the book Gravity, this is not your only book.
No.
So do you want to share with us what that people can find when they go to your website, and also some of the other projects that you've been working on?
Sure. I actually just put out a cozy mystery under a pen name, Claire Stewart. It's just a novella, but it's kicking off the fiction side of things for me. And then in my other nonfiction, I do some writing for military magazines. I've done Military History Magazine and Military Officer, and those stories are always a lot of fun, a lot quicker than a book too. But I also write about bourbon. So I have a book out, Talk Bourbon to Me and Talk Bourbon to Me Too. And they are just they're just a ton of fun. It's a breakdown for the average. I kind of look at us like tailgaters. You know, we're not out there to be the aficionados, just out there having fun and trying to get some basic information on what bourbon is and what its history is. And it kind of reminds me of the military in a lot of ways, which might sound odd on the surface, but there is such a rich tradition in the bourbon world and in the distilling world and in the coopers who are building the barrels. You know, there's such attention to detail and craftsmanship and excellence. And I think you find those same things in the military. So it seems to be a pretty good match.
So I'm going to take a copy of your link of Talk Bourbon to Me and put this in here. And you said you're in Kentucky now, or you're originally from Kentucky?
I was actually born in Georgia, but yeah, I did most of my growing up in Kentucky. Yeah, in Lexington, Central Kentucky.
So what advice do you give for authors who are sort of at that point, they would really like to become an author, so maybe they're not an author yet, but they have a story, they have a concept like Talk Bourbon to Me that they want to share? What's your advice to those people out there listening today?
Learn all you can about, especially if you're going to self-publish. Learn all you can about it, and know what your options are before you dive in. And be kind of find the authors who seem to share the same values you share, whether that be in the genre you write in, whatever the case might be. Find people that you feel good about, and then develop a tribe. I think that's probably one of the most important things that you can do, is to have a good tribe. So, a group of people that you can count on and depend on.
I think that's really important, and that's something that's really been echoed throughout the day. One of the authors I featured earlier is a friend of one of my writing groups, and it's amazing how just online you can meet people, you can connect to them, and sometimes you might be having that bad day. Maybe you got a bad review or something, and you're like, I just need this pick me up, and this is what your author group can do, as well as when you want to throw out concepts and see what resonates, because often we can end up in an echo chamber, and it's good to get that feedback from other authors.
Yeah, it is. And it's also good not to read your reviews and never answer them. That's probably one of that's a really good piece of advice that I still read them. Sometimes there have been occasions where I wished I hadn't, but yeah, I think it's pretty good advice to just sort of ignore those reviews for the most part. And also realize that it's not such, you know, we always think that you got to have those 5-star reviews, and they're great. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, you also need to understand that there will be people who won't like your book, who won't like what you have to say or how you say it, or they won't like your cover, or, you know, anything you can imagine. I burnt, my dinner was burned, so your book is getting a 1-star tonight. And you know, people can be a little bit strange on that, but it's good to have a little give and take and not have everything look so perfect, because I think people are alert to that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And in the last segment of 24 Authors in 12 Hours, Jimmy Gia, he said the most positive thing. He said, I like the bad reviews if they give me comments and they tell me their feedback and what I can improve on. Because the good reviews don't tell me how to improve.
No, they do not. No, they cheer for you, which is great too. Don't get me wrong. That is great. Nice to have it, because this isn't a career for the meek and timid. You really have to kind of suck it up and get out there and not worry about what else is saying. So
yeah, you have to develop a bit of a thick skin, and especially even things like this, being on these interviews, or somebody who's not going to like it, somebody who's going to have something negative to say, but there's so much positive in the world. And for me, when I first started this concept of the 24 Authors in 12 Hours, we're not able to go out to book festivals right now. We can't do book signings, all those kind of traditional means. So what I wanted to do is give a forum for authors where they can share their books, they can share their concepts. And just like at a book festival, different authors will be featured and able to talk about it in front of a stage to give authors that platform.
Yeah. Fabulous idea. Fabulous idea.
So Beth, this segment has just happened so quickly. We are about ready to roll up. What I do want to do is real quick mention the next author, C. Marshall Turner, A Cajun's Journey. And what's really fascinating when everyone gets to meet her is she is a veteran. I'm going to let her give a lot of her story and how we met and everything. But Beth, before I go, is there anything that you want to say that I haven't asked you a question about yet?
You know, I think I'd just like to say how I was blessed by getting to meet all of these guys and getting to develop friendships that have stood the test of time for over 15 years now. And it was just truly a blessing to be able to get a story that's this unique, something I never expected in a million years I would have written. It was truly an honor to write.
Well, I think it's a book that really is very, very honest and gives a perspective of the citizen soldier, the National Guardsmen and women out there, as well as the reserves. A lot of people, I think it could help them to understand what it was like during that time frame. So thank you so much for what you did and the service you did by writing this book.
Well, thank you for your service, and thank you again for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Beth.
Thank you. You do the same.